¿cómo estás? I am Dee, about to react to this video about what culture wrestling. This is 10 wrestlers who saved their careers twice with gimmick changes. Yes, come through Bray Wyatt. He was on the thumbnail. So I know he's one of the people. Who else? I don't know, actually. Can't think of any. But I wonder, is that the primary reason that wrestlers will change into like a new gimmick? Is it because their persona is like dying off? Is it because people are losing interest in them? It's never because they just want to shake things up and they want to try something different. It's always to save their career. I wonder. Or is it primarily to save their career? I wonder. But we're about to see what they say. Let's watch.
Gimmicks. A forgotten art form in 2019, they're more than just a way to get a wrestler to stand out. They can completely change someone's fortune and keep them employed far longer than anybody thought.
Okay, multiple reasons.
Please note, this isn't a list saying these particular characters were in good taste or even overly popular, just that they allowed a performer to keep on ticking. That is the power they have too, even if it is just because of the chatter around them. We all look over how important that is today. Even if you have social media buzz, a company is going to be less likely to let you go, because you may go and take that hype somewhere else. It's lucky enough when you can do this once, but twice, that's just proving you're ahead of the curve.
Oh,
I'm Simon
he did
from What
do it
Culture. Remember to
twice. I
subscribe.
forgot.
And this is 10 wrestlers who saved their careers twice with gimmicks. Number 10, Charles Wright. Could you even come up with two gimmicks that were more different? Charles Wright was given the role of a skull-shrinking witch doctor before being revamped as a pimp. And they say wrestling is unbelievable. He didn't start with these either. When he first came into the then WWF, he pretended to be a basketball player before the powers that be heard about his Soul Taker character. That soon changed into Papa Shango, and as daft as that was, it kinda did work. Why else do you think he tangled with Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania and made the Ultimate Warrior bleed green? In the cartoon early 90s, he was just accepted as a menace. This hit a giant wall when he was recast as Kama Mustafa, some kind of MMA fighter, and that was true as well during his time in the Nation of Domination. More often than not, it felt like he was making up the numbers. Seemingly, he had to dip to his lowest before flying high, because following this, he became the Godfather and is still well remembered today. It may have been because it tied into his real-life job as a strip club owner, but he did indeed walk to the ring with an entourage of prostitutes, and sometimes even offer his opponents their services as opposed to fighting. This would never fly now, but just go back and watch how fans responded. It undoubtedly kept him in the organisation far longer than he may have done otherwise. Number 9, Mabel. Vince McMahon seemed to like Mabel a lot, always finding a place for him. There were no rules as to what he should or shouldn't do. It all tied into the craziness of the mid-90s when WWE booked Mabel to win the King of the Ring in 1995 and then had Stone Cold Steve Austin win it the following year. That is quite the transition. It didn't really work for the man on a mission, and after some time out the spotlight, he returned in 1999 as Viscera, or a part of the Undertaker's ministry. He didn't do much, but he fit the role well, especially because he was an enforcer. Plus he had spooky contact lenses. That's all you need. He got released in 2000, but as already said, McMahon was keen on him, so he brought him back in 2004 as Big Vis, the world's largest love machine. How that worked, I don't know, but it did. He found a spot as a mid-card comedy gimmick, and for a little while, fans lapped it up. It had a shelf life, of course, but without it, he would have likely vanished far sooner than this. Number 8, Ron Simmons. It's amazing Ron Simmons lasted 6 seconds in WWE. When he arrived in 1996, he was given a stupid helmet and told to be a gladiator. For a guy who'd been kicking ass in WCW, I'm surprised he didn't pick up his coat and leave instantly like Grandpa Simpson. Really, really bad. When he was cast as the leader of the Nation of Domination, though, it all changed. Not only were the group quite bold at the time, but as the outspoken head of it, Farouk stood out. It was an utter 180 as he went from a goof to having some serious edge. Even now, when you go back to watch it, you get the feeling that something different is going on. Like all stables in wrestling, it had a shelf life, and when The Rock stood into these shoes, Farouk needed something else to do. While nobody would have expected him to team with real-life friend Bradshaw and form the APA, well, he did, and it really worked. Not only that, but he did so in 2 different incarnations. The first was as the Acolytes alongside the Undertaker, but when the time was right, the pair just became ass-kicking beer drinkers, and fans loved it. They even had a fake office where they played poker. It lasted far longer than any other gimmick would, and Simmons still comes back to WWE from time to time just to say, damn. That's when you know you've done something
Really?
right.
I
Number
don't
7,
recall
Bradshaw.
seeing it.
Speaking of Bradshaw, he went and did the same thing. Before the APA, he had struggled as Justin Bradshaw, who was just some dude, a member of the new Blackjacks, which is always rubbish, and the aforementioned Acolytes, but when they transitioned into the APA, it helped them both. Finally had something which the audience could engage with. He looked done as well when Simmons retired and WWE tried to turn Bradshaw into a modern day Stan Hansen, and it failed miserably. He even got put in a main event teaming with Stone Cold to no avail, but then along came JBL. More of a J.R. Ewing meets $1 Million Man inspired role, he was incredibly easy to hate, and boy howdy the crowd did. When he won the world title, people were desperate for him to have his ass kicked, and this gimmick along with Eddie Guerrero's work in getting him over was the perfect recipe for one of the most surprising switch-ups in wrestling history. It even got him a job as a commentator for years to boot. Nobody saw this coming. Number 6, Mark Henry. Back to personas that change so much you can't understand what exactly the WWE creative process is. Mark Henry was all over the place during his career, but don't get me wrong. As silly as sexual chocolate was, it was a needed injection of fun for the world's strongest man, who required something to allow him to stand out. Hadn't really clicked as an Olympian or as a guy in the nation, but being the roster's Casanova ticked a box. And sure, dating Mae Young was ridiculous, but it gave Henry personality, and he threw himself into it with so much gusto, you had to respect him. He didn't hold back even when given material that was offensive. And of course, there's everything with that hand.
I remember seeing the clip of that.
It got serious in 2011 when Mark finally found his feet. The Hall of Pain gimmick proved that he did have terrifying chops between his warlike physique, and for a while he was one of the best things in WWE and a worthy winner of the World Heavyweight title. You couldn't have got more polar opposites, but both ensured Henry rang the gauntlet and came out the other side a legend. Without them, this wouldn't have been the case. Number 5, Matt Hardy. Just saying 2 gimmicks seems unfair when Matt Hardy's involved because he has about 67,578. There are a couple that seem to have the most impact though. The first arrived in 2001. Following article after article in magazines that stated Jeff would go on to be the star, Matt took all of that and threw it in the bin by inventing version 1. Following the Hardy Boys breakup during the brand split, Matt flourished on SmackDown complete with a unique entrance and Matt facts, as well as a bonkers character that claimed he was the best. It got over and would have done more so if WWE had gotten properly behind it. I don't think anybody expected it to work as well as it did, hence why it soon lost steam. He wasn't meant to do this. Years later there was yet more wrongful assumptions as many thought that Matt was washed up, and that's when he walked in as the broken one and in many ways changed the wrestling business. It turned Hardy into the most talked about act in the industry and he used it to climb back to the top. It's a shame that WWE didn't deal with that very well either, but this is reinvention and it's darn fast.
Wait, how they didn't deal with that well?
Triple H. Triple H doesn't get enough credit for his transformation. Like many in the mid-90s, he was saddled with the dumbest of all gimmicks as a Greenwich Blue Blood, which could have killed his WWE run before it even began. That guy was never going to be headlining WrestleMania. When he teamed up with real-life friend Shawn Michaels as DX though, everything changed. Both by association and how different the group was. D-Generation X became one of the biggest things in wrestling and turned Hunter from nobody to cult hero. He doubled down on that when HBK left by becoming the leader of the stable and even had the foresight to realise when it was time to change again. Triple H didn't need to turn on his friends in 1999 as there was life left in it, but the game wanted more. Seeking affirmation as a main eventer, he jumped into this new tough guy role with names like the Cerebral Assassin and proved to everyone he belonged. And sure, the likes of Mick Foley helped, but it takes 2 to tango. If he hadn't have done this as well, it's not a given he would have escaped the mid-card. As it was, he became a pivotal part of the Attitude Era, even if soon after everyone turned on him. We love Papa H again now though, and that's what matters. The past is the past. Number 3, Bray Wyatt. Is there anyone more creative in WWE right now than Bray Wyatt? Probably not. Allowed to have freedom that others aren't, he shines even if the company ruined him by never letting him win a feud. That's where it all went wrong round 1-2. The Eater of Worlds gimmick was so different and exciting he was soon dubbed as the new Undertaker as he cut promos like he'd been doing it for years. It was creepy and engaging in the best possible way. As stated, WWE did cut that off at their knees, but Wyatt's major strength seems to be learning from mistakes and even incorporating those into a new character. As the rebooted Firefly Funhouse Fiend, Bray makes references to all his old guises, including Husky Harris, a character that was killed off for being too out of shape. Takes some moxie to process that and use it down the line. Either way, this gimmick has saved Wyatt from the bottom of the barrel position he found himself in, and now it's all about what happens when he transitions back into the ring. If WWE allows him to shine, he will finally be able to take his crown as the King of Wrestling. Don't do that literally though. That will ruin everything again. Number 2, The Undertaker. Let's make something very clear. As good as The Undertaker gimmick was, not every wrestler could have made this work. It took Mark Calloway to turn it into the monster it has become today. He embraced it with every ounce of his being, and now it's probably the best character we've ever seen in history. Tweaks were made to keep it fresh throughout the years, but the biggest came in 2000 when he became Biker Taker, or the American Badass. Now I have said time and time again this wasn't for me, but I also know there's a whole generation of fans who first met this version of the gimmick and loved it, and I get that too. Who kicked more ass than the Undertaker at the turn of the millennium? Literally never lost. The fact it was more akin to his real-life personality helped, as did his decision to return to the Phenom 4 years later. This simple change kept the audience on their toes, always wanting a little bit more of what they didn't have. It's why he still generates huge reactions today, and will forever be considered a hero. Who knew that was possible for a guy that's meant to be dead? Number 1, Steve Austin. Steve Austin has range. While as a performer he's most well known for being a badass, he proved long before this he knew what he was doing when he was put with Brian Pillman as the Hollywood Blondes. They were only joined up because WCW had no clue what to do with either of them, and then they were split up because they got too over. What a stupid world we live in. It did help him get noticed, however, and after he left that company, his short run in ECW proved he could flip this on his head and play a tough old so-and-so too. And he became the ringmaster. That sucked as we know, but following a short detour, he did reinvent himself as the Rattlesnake. Not only did that catapult him to the top of the industry, but it made him a damn legend. Vince McMahon soon latched onto this, and together they made more money than anyone ever has done within wrestling. Given that would not have happened has he stayed as the ringmaster, I think we can call this a saving of somebody's career.
Hey, this was a really good list. And yeah, it makes sense. These transitions into different characters definitely make sense. I really like Bray Wyatt's new character because it heavily correlates to his last creepy character. It's not like something completely different. Versus some of these were like totally left field. Like they completely changed. His makes more sense. It was like a smooth transition. But can't wait to see what happens with his creepy character, if he gonna get in the ring or what. I'm definitely gonna react to the highlights from what's that shit called? I forgot the name of it. Stumping Grounds? Bam. So send me some links of that so I can react to the highlights. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!